Hey guys, LeAnna here, welcome to my channel, and today I thought I would share with you my first period story, kind of like what it's like to get your first period. First of all, I kind of want to show you a little vocabulary. Did you know that your first period is also referred to as menarche? Yeah, I'm going to type that in the screen here for you so you can see the word, but that is another term for it. So if you're seeing like medical documents or other people talking about menarche, it's your first period. Before I tell you guys what my first period was like, I just wanted to remind you to click the little subscribe button and give it a little thumbs up. If you feel like leaving a comment, go ahead and leave it down below. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, here we go. So thinking back to what your first period looks like, or what my first period looked like, I was the summer going into 6th grade for me. So I would have been I just had to do the math in my head, but I was, just to double check myself, but I was just 12 years old, maybe by like a couple of months, because I started the summer going into 6th grade. I remember I was actually prepared for it because of my fantastic mother. She actually educated me herself, because the education we got in the school system, and you still do today, is like very limited. So it wouldn't have really prepared me, honestly. My mother actually went out of her way to, to have that conversation with me, which I am extremely grateful for, because otherwise I'd have probably thought I was dying. And I hear that story a lot, where there's just not that open dialogue at home. So then girls are like, what is going on? Anyway, so I remember being prepared for it, and I remember going into my parents' bathroom. I did feel kind of like crampy that day, but again, I had no experience. I didn't obviously know what a cramp felt like. You can explain them to people, but it's a little bit different explaining it versus actually feeling it. So I remember going into my parents' bathroom and sitting down to go to the bathroom, and to go pee, and I wiped myself and there was blood on the tissue. And I looked at it and I put 2 and 2 together. I was cramping, there's blood here. This has got to be my first period. And it was. I actually went and I called my mom into the bathroom, and she came in and she was like, oh, you got your first period. That's so exciting. And she still had her period at that time. So she gave me a pad, because I was not comfortable with tampons at that point. I was like, no, I was not, just because I was 12, because this is all new. So I used a pad and I put the pad down. And I remember it being, like I said, I remember having cramps, and I remember having to go to the bathroom a lot, which apparently runs in my family. I know it's a normal thing, but my mother's mother, so my grandmother on my maternal side, she would have the terrible cramps. Like, she would be in and out of the bathroom. Her back was killing her. She'd actually throw up, all kinds of craziness. So I was actually anticipating something like that, although my mother's weren't that. I was really thankful to just have the cramps, but the cramping wasn't terrible, or at least it doesn't stick out into my mind as being exceptionally terrible. I will say throughout my teen years, they were probably worse than they normally are, but that makes complete sense, because actually from the time you start menarche, or you have your first period, for about 3 or 4 years, your reproductive system is actually still growing and figuring things out. So it makes sense for you to have maybe irregular cycles if you're a teenager, or you have really heavy cycles or really painful ones. It actually makes sense because it's kind of leveling out. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. If something's exceptional, you're going to want a doctor to look at that. But also just know that it is normal to have it be kind of all over the place, because everything's kind of settling, your hormones and your system's growing, which is why, in my opinion, unless there's a medical condition, it's so detrimental for you to be on hormonal birth control, because it actually stunts the growth of your system. So imagine being on the pill when you're like 12 or 13, and then flash forward till you're like 25 and you're like, oh, I'm ready to have a kid, and you come off of it and you're gonna probably have a really hard time conceiving, because of the fact that your system also just isn't mature yet, so you're gonna have to level that back out. Anyway, just getting back to the main point, I remember all of that. I remember going, well, this is something I have to deal with now, and going into 6th grade, and I remember being nervous about having the things when I need them, having pads or whatever, because I was a pad girl in the beginning, so having my pads when I needed them. And again, this ties into actually a vlog I did a couple weeks ago about, can the media influence your period, or how the media and TV influences your period. And I would definitely say that my mother did not instill a fear or an embarrassment of the period, but you feel that influence. You feel like, oh, I gotta be hush hush, don't tell anybody about this, or I gotta like very carefully unwrap my pad and all this kind of stuff. I remember not embarrassed to have my period. It was more of, I was a little unsure how to handle it, but I was also thankful that I got it in the summertime, because that gave me a couple of months to kind of figure life out and before I started 6th grade, which was a whole other thing. Now, I will say the embarrassing first period story that is actually not embarrassing to me now. So give you a little background information. My father, whom I love dearly, physically looks like The Undertaker, who, if I could find a picture, I might put up in there. If not, Google The Undertaker if you don't know who he is. And like literally my dad's gotten mistaken for The Undertaker before. Like he looks like the guy. And he's a man of a few words, right? So I remember when I got my first period, my mom told my father that, hey, you know, LeAnna said Menarche. Well, she didn't say Menarche, but LeAnna got her first period. And I think it was like the next day or maybe a couple of days later, it was within that first week, that my father came to me with this vase of flowers. Now it looked like a sundae, like the glass vase actually looked like a sundae cup, and then the flowers were arranged to look like a sundae. So I think they were white. They might have been alternating white and like a darker color, but I think it was all white with like one red in the middle, so it looked like an ice cream sundae, which was so cute. I ended up keeping that vase for a very long time. I'm not sure what happened to it. Anyway, he handed me these flowers and he said, "You're no longer my little girl, now you're a woman." And I remember just wanting to melt and blend in with the background and going like, oh my God, like this is so embarrassing that my father would come and present me with these flowers. Like I am so embarrassed, you know, like, oh, thank you. Like, and that I was so mortified by that. But now looking back on that, I appreciate what my father must have gone through to even go out and buy these flowers and to even give them to me and say that. And I appreciate the heck out of it. Like I look back on that story now, that memory actually with fondness. And I love the fact that my dad actually went out of his way to acknowledge what I was going through. Because I know a lot of fathers don't do that because they don't know how, or they don't know if they should, or they're embarrassed. And so they're like, well, I'm just not even going to touch that. I don't think my dad watches my vlogs, but just in case, Dad, I don't even know if you remember doing that, but I do, and I love you for it. So that was pretty much my first period. Like I said, it was pretty uneventful. Like I knew what was coming on. I knew what was happening. I kind of knew when to expect it. I didn't obviously know really anything about like the calendar method. I was like, okay, well this comes like once every month is pretty much what I did. So it was like, okay, well I had it on this day, so maybe it's around that day. I had no clue about charting. Obviously I didn't know anything about the fertility awareness method. I knew nothing about cervical mucus. I knew nothing about anything. And I didn't really know about birth control until I started seeing it in TV shows, so that was honestly all new to me as well. But I was able to get used to it before I started middle school. And middle school went by fine. I don't remember really talking to my friends about it. I think there might have been a couple of friends that mentioned they started their period, or I think all the birthday parties I went to were perfectly timed to where I didn't need to worry about pool parties. But I do remember a couple of girls when I was at a pool party going, I can't go swimming right now. So I do remember that. I feel like it might have happened one time, but honestly, it might have also been like, I didn't feel like going swimming because there was like 40 people in the swimming pool. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with these girls because I don't want to be in the pool with 20,000 other people. And if you're wondering like, okay, we use pads. How long did you use pads for? I used them all the way until my junior year of high school. So I was definitely a pad girl up until then. And I only started using tampons because I auditioned and got the role of drum major in high school band, which if you don't know what a drum major is, it's the person leading the band. It's the person in front of the band conducting and all of that. And our uniforms were white pants and with this little tiny like jacket thing on top, and we had to wear a white body length leotard underneath it. And I was like, white? No, that's not gonna happen. So I remember that actually I got the position at the end of my sophomore year of high school. So I had the whole summer to kind of teach myself how to use tampons, which I'm gonna do a whole video on that because I feel like that deserves its own topic. Yeah, that was so much fun. I remember that's the time I think I started really opening up about periods because I started keeping tampons and pads and stuff with me in case other people needed it. And I know my fellow drum major, who I don't know if she watches my vlogs, but if you do, you probably remember us going, how are you handling this? And so I think we did have that conversation because I know we definitely talked about things with that. But yeah, so that was my first period. I know it seems pretty uneventful. I know there are a lot of girls out there who are traumatized because they maybe don't have that kind of open dialogue with their parents, or cultural reasons to where they see your menarche or your first period as like this really terrible thing. And I've heard of people even there's a practice over in, I want to say Bali because the name is escaping me right now, but it's somewhere over there where they actually isolate you for the entire week because they think that a period is a bad omen and it's going to destroy crops and hurt the village and all this kind of stuff. stuff. And even though it's outlawed, it's still practiced. So I realize that there are a lot of cultural stigmas out there, and I hope you're not going through one of those. If you are, just know that your period is a normal and beautiful thing to go through. It means your body is working the right way. It's the way it's supposed to work. That's my first period story. I know it's pretty uneventful, and you guys are probably waiting to hear about like, oh, I leaked through my white pants, and I think the only white pants I ever owned were the ones I needed for my uniform for choir. So yeah, I was not ever really into light colors. I still am not, which is funny because I'm wearing a light colored top. But yeah, so that was that. And I will say that if there are men out there, or if you have like a husband or something and you have daughters, find some way to acknowledge it. They're gonna be mortified in the beginning, but they'll appreciate it. And I don't mean like make them a cake and take it to school. I mean some little tender moment like my father did with me. He just kind of pulled me aside and said, hey. So I really appreciate it. Again, mortified at the time, but fast forward to later, and I really do appreciate that. So that was story time today about my menarche, or my first period. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the little notification bell so you know every time I upload new videos, which is every Tuesday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All my social media is down below, along with a bunch of other links to other goodies and stuff. I will see you guys on Friday. Bye.